Audio, NTDO 212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Talking Sound podcast. I am Chris Jordan, your host, live on the road right now, coming to you from the nation's capital. I'm here in Washington, D.C., just got done doing a gig in the great state of Virginia over in the National Harbor area, and getting ready to take off for a week in Vegas. And today I happened to hop on the phone with a good old friend, been on a few episodes of the Talking Sound podcast. My old buddy, Alan Cunningham, audio engineer extraordinaire, is on the line to talk about what it is to go from rock and roll to the corporate environment. It's something that I did. It's a transition I made to no regret. I know some people that struggle with the decision. They do corporate AV on the side, but they're really conflicted inside with it, things like that. And as we were talking about it today, just where career paths have taken us, things that we've done, and where we are now, it was the fact of like, dude, we've got to do an episode about this. So welcome to the podcast, Alan Cunningham. How are you this evening, buddy?
Very good. How about yourself?
Doing great, man. Just to catch the audience up, some people haven't tuned in to season 1, to season 2, to season 3, things like that. Alan Cunningham's been on.
Well, we haven't done this in a minute.
You and I haven't done it in a minute, yeah. And I started traveling so much that it turned from video to audio, so that I could start doing it more frequently. I was like, I miss doing my show. I've got to be able to do it. So I turned it into an audio podcast with occasional video instructionals, because I was like, I just got to do it more than I'm doing it, and I'm traveling so much I don't have the time to produce video, but I can do audio super simple, super quick. So we were talking about stuff like that along the lines of live podcasting, along the lines of doing podcasts for companies, live at events, that kind of stuff. And like I said, we just were like, we really need to do an episode about the corporate AV world and the corporate audio world specifically, and the differences between the two.
Oh my
Alan,
God!
you were one of the people that was seminal in my experience. You were right there at the beginning, in the cusp of me becoming a audio engineer. And video engineer even, right as I met you was as I was starting my internship in video, doing video editing, things like that. You really took me from the level of doing small, like, head mixing stuff, like 6 to 8 input PA heads and home 4-track mixing, to large console over 16 channels, up to 24, 32 channel boards, large racks of gears.
And we had to rent 40s a couple of times,
we ran some large stuff back in the day, and it was really great. And like I said, very similar in my experience, the change between theater and the things I was doing with video going into the live audio realm. You were really one of the people that taught me how to change the same system from room to room on the daily, things like that. And I
well, we kind of didn't have a choice.
We didn't have much of a choice, and at the same time that you did that for me, I was basically the person that was like, you need to get into corporate audio. I know that you love rock and roll.
Yes.
Go do rock and roll all night long. But hey, man, from 8 to 5, there ain't no rock and roll going on. You need to go do some corporate audio and make some corporate money. And it's been a couple years now since that happened. And what has that transition been like for you, going from the realm of rock and roll almost solely? There was some church work in there, things like that, but really you did a lot of live music, a lot of music recording, a lot of music engineering. What is it like for you as an engineer to go from that realm and transition and shift gears utterly into the corporate realm?
Well, to be honest, I felt like I was almost committing treason when I first did it. I felt like, oh my God, I'm selling out. I was not happy at all, with the mere idea of it. Many a night I sat up but I was like, but I'm hungry.
So
it
hungry.
got to the point where
ramen just doesn't feed me properly anymore.
No, fat boy got to eat. Come on.
Yeah.
And ramen ain't where it's at. I'm a diabetic. I can't eat that bullshit. I do, but I shouldn't. No, in all honesty, it was a matter of, I can't work in an office anymore. I can't drive a truck. Believe me, I totally tried other jobs to try and get paid for a while there because, rock and roll wasn't paying me.
Well, and quite honestly, you leaned back on, and who doesn't? Even as a rock and roll and club engineer, even as a live AV engineer, I have the confidence in the fact of any city I move to, I can find somewhere to cook in a kitchen. I spent years as a prep cook and as a pizza cook and stuff like that. I can go anywhere and find me a job on the daily from 9 to 5. You yourself were trained by the Army as a diesel technician. You know how to repair and maintain diesel trucks. So anywhere you go in the country, you can go find you a diesel yard that's putting trucks out into the field, be they dump trucks, be they concrete mixers, trash trucks, whatever.
Heavy equipment.
And you can go out and you can maintain and repair their fleet of machines. That's a perfect day job. And then you can run
I'm also
sound
a certified
at night.
welder.
Yeah. So you got options as far as a day job. And at the same time, just like me working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week at a straight job, you were out mixing at venues like Fitzgerald's, things like that, 2-3 nights a week, spending almost an equal amount of time working 60 to 80 hours a week between the two jobs. To struggle to do what you love to do and compromise yourself to do what you had to do in order to survive and eat.
Oh, yeah. No, believe me. I mean, working on diesel trucks and driving them for a while and managing fleets, well, that bought a lot of my equipment.
Yeah.
At least recently, and I'm still running it too.
That's
so
basically
I'm
what
quite
I did.
happy with it.
People asked me how I moved back from Maine with like a whole sound system and studio full of gear and stuff like that. And it was like, I worked a 40-hour-a-week straight job, cooking in kitchens, things like that, to pay my bills. And then I ran sound either for clubs or for private bands at least 5 nights a week and did live recordings and sold live recordings and stuff. And all that money went to buy used microphones, microphone stands, cables, mixers, whatever I needed to build HC Productions and start my company. And it was all and not only that, it was the concept of I quit smoking a pack of butts a day.
Yeah, that helps a lot too.
I quit drinking out. However, I maintained that same monetary lifestyle. So basically, I took my $4, $5 a day in cigarettes, and I devoted that to music gear. So you're
that
still
actually
living,
is pretty exceptional.
You're living the same exact monetary lifestyle on the same budget, except that money is now diverted and going toward equipment, going toward cables,
exactly,
stuff like that. It's just a shift of mentality, and it literally is which one's more important to you, 20 cigarettes a day or a microphone at the end of the week.
I don't know. For a while there, me quitting smoking, as much as I was spending on it, was paying for flying lessons.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Something to better yourself.
I've actually got some
hours
now.
About. And if it's the fact that you're that passionate about smoking cigarettes, by all means, go out and smoke cigarettes. It's America. It's a free world. Yeah. Go out and do it. But you wanted to take flying lessons. And the only way that you could substantiate that was to cut back on another habit so you could start a habit that ultimately and soulfully is more healthy for you.
Oh, totally. No, believe me. I mean, I was smoking 2 packs of those damn Djarms a day.
I know.
And those are, big boy cigarettes.
One of those is equal to 4 regular cigarettes.
Right. And I was
as far
smoking
as
2 packs of
harshness on
those
your
a day.
lungs and things like that.
Oh, I might as well have been, just, having
inhaling
fiberglass
cigars.
face masks and stuff.
Yeah. You should have just been inhaling cigars every day.
Oh my God. Yeah, but that just right there. I mean, I was spending $10 a day.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'd certainly rather spend that in aviation fuel and flight instructor than on something that's going to destroy my life.
Yeah. And you really do have to learn to shift priority like that. And I remember whenever I told you about the corporate AV world, and I was like, Alan, dude, you got to get in on this. Let me make a few phone calls. Let me drop your name to a few people, and let's get you in on some stuff. And I remember the first go around, it was the fact of, they called you during the day, things like that. And you were like, I can't do it. I'm working this job. And then that ended up falling through at some point. And you followed.
No, I told them to fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. And at the same token, called up the other people. You were like, I'm going to give myself a couple days off, then I'm going to go call these people again and get back into it, like you were saying. And how has that been for you since?
Well, I tell you, it took a while to get reestablished, and the companies that you referred me to weren't the ones that called me at first, but there was a company out of Dallas that I worked for that helped me get my foot in the door, and I got a couple of engineering gigs and got a little, reputation as a A2, A1 kind of guy who was savvy about systems. Mm-hmm. And I started learning little bits about video. Let me give a disclaimer here.
Yeah.
I hate video.
I know you do.
No disrespect. No disrespect.
I'm mainly a video op now. I have gone to the dark side.
Yeah, there's cookies over there, though.
Come, use your anger. Yeah. Strike me down.
Oh, believe me, there's been a couple of fast holds that have met their doom with my hands.
Oh, no, I sailed it down too quick. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Probably would have helped if I'd have left the screen on at first.
And how you feel about video is about how I feel about digital audio. Right as I became basically a video op, because people found out I had broadcast experience, things like that. And they were like, oh, we need video ops much more than we need audio ops, at least in the corporate world. And I started doing that a lot more. And right as that happened, right as that curve of career took off, and I had to start learning more and more and more about digital video, HD, Ultra HD, 4K, things like that, resolutions, all that kind of stuff, was when the arc of digital technology started taking over audio. And I kind of missed that learning curve, whereas I had some experience with digital audio consoles in the broadcast realm, where if I have time to sit back and tweak things for an afternoon, and set things and forget them for my broadcast later, totally all day long. But you put me in a studio environment with it, like I'm familiar with analog, you put me in a live environment, I just can't navigate the menus fast enough to be able to do things properly. And I utterly admit my own shortfallings. Instead of doing it myself, I normally book a friend like you and make like $4 or $5 an hour off the booking or something, something like that.
No, I understand that.
I'd much rather put a friend to work while I'm out doing a video call than to just say no to be able to provide a competent audio engineer. Like, you give me an analog, and I'm straight with my clients. I'm like, you put me on an analog system, I will kick ass all day long. But you put me on a digital system, and I'm not necessarily your guy. And
I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way.
And that's the difference between rock and roll and corporate. Because rock and roll, you fake it till you make it. You can't do that necessarily in corporate so much.
No, it has to be precise. It has to be precise.
If it's not precision, they know immediately. Just all kinds of wild stuff.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, the thing is the idea of being a live corporate engineer is to be 100% transparent. The sound, ideally, and you're not always working with the ideal gear. Sometimes it's, a couple of powered speakers on a stick and a little Mackie, 4-channel mixer. That's honestly more often than not what we wind up running. And as an A1, that's what I wind up running around and setting. There's only so much you can do. There's no EQ, nothing. So you're supposed to be able to do a lot with just a little bit. It's your knowledge that's the key. It's not the equipment. If you have the knowledge, if you have the patience, if you take the time, and it doesn't take that much, really, you can make even the tiniest, crappiest system sound great. And really, when the client gets on the stage and they're giving their presentation, they need to know they can trust you.
Yeah.
They need to know you have their back.
That's it. Yeah. And it really is. You put a good turn of phrase to it earlier today, and you were like, I gratefully thank you for teaching me this, and it's the fact of it's not my stage, it's yours. And it's it's something that's so ingrained in you as an audio engineer that, like, hey man, this is my stage, this is my world right now. You're up on my stage, these are the inputs that we have, this is what we need to do. You need to adjust what you're doing to my world right now. As a musician,
to a certain degree.
Sure.
Yes,
like we both need to make compromises in order to make this show happen. I've got 12 channels. You have 22 on your rider. I can't make more channels, but you can make less. So what can we sacrifice? Can we just do kick snare overhead instead of kick snare tom 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 left right? Because that strikes 4.
Yeah, exactly.
That's 4 right there that we don't need in order to technically get the show done.
Let's not put the condenser and the 57 on the guitar amp.
We don't need a top and bottom snare mic tonight.
Hold on, wait a minute. Some things can't be negotiated. If I have a phase reverse, if I have my console as a phase reverse, I'm using that bottom snare mic. Sorry. Actually, for a lot of the early Pink Floyd recordings, all they used was a bottom snare mic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why it sounds so snappy and crisp, and it was a condenser mic as well. So, it was a Sheps or something, equally awesome.
Yeah.
And to get back to that, a lot of the stuff you're going to work with is not going to be awesome doing corporate. You know what?
No.
Rock and roll guys, my God, all the money goes into the equipment. Where would you rather see that money go? Into some gear that's going to be obsolete in 6 months, or into your pocket? And I hate to say it, but rock and roll guys, unless you're on a top tier tour, you guys don't get paid the way you're supposed to. Rock and roll is hard ass work.
It is. And I can tell you straight up from doing huge venue work, going out and setting up local shows. Like I worked Roger Waters' The Wall. I worked Tom Petty. I worked Arctic Monkeys. I worked Paul McCartney. I worked Eric Clapton.
Sir Paul.
Everything except the Grateful Dead and Led Zeppelin. And whenever the Grateful Dead came to town, number one, I want to punch you in the face because you didn't call me and tell me that you were going. Number two, I was on a gig and I couldn't go. And it was like, man, I almost came out of retirement from rock and roll to go push cases for that. I was like, I will take $100 on the day for 4 hours in, 4 hours out, and a T-shirt to go work with the Grateful Dead. I would do that. I got to work Rush. I actually have the drum towel that they gave me to wipe down Neil Peart's drum kit. $2 a gander, $4 if you want to touch it, folks.
Right?
I am like P.T. Barnum with all of my rock and roll memorabilia. It's actually to the point where I have so many T-shirts from shows, from bands that I worked with that gave me shirts, things like that. That number one, I can't wear them all the time, and it makes me sad. Number two, I'm a little bit more robust than I used to be in numerous facets. And I don't necessarily fit them all properly anymore. Some of them are so worn that they have holes in them, things like that. And I actively want to find somebody that makes quilts and send them.
I just happen to know some. I just so happen to know somebody.
Yeah, we need to talk about that whenever we're off air. And it is one of those
Totally.
that, like, yeah, I remember whenever I told you that I'd gone, because you were like, "Oh my God, dude, you moved to Austin. I can't believe that you beat me to Austin."
No, I'd already been and gone. I didn't like it the first time.
Yeah, and it was like, "What are you doing there? You know, what bands are you working with, this and that?" And I was like, "I'm not, dude. I do nothing but corporate AV." And you were like, "Traitor? Like, what the hell are you doing that? Like, seriously? Like, you? Like, all you did was music. That's it."
People got to eat, man.
That's it. And the day I went to corporate AV and found the fact that I was being compensated about twice as much to 3 times as much sometimes as what I was getting paid in rock and roll to do the exact same thing.
And that was entry level.
Yeah, exactly. I ran arms wide open. People actively came up and shook my hand and thanked me at the end of the day. It wasn't a whole lot of attitude being thrown to me from stage, questions as to why this didn't work. Why is that broken? Well, because the club owner doesn't want to replace it. You suck. I don't. That dude does for not replacing it. That's not my job.
My God. Oh, Lord. If I had a buck for every time I had to deal with a surly band member. But for a fact, I didn't take a whole lot of bullshit.
No. And, that's just it. There comes a point where you literally begin to see the skill set that you have and start to judge the gigs that you have against that. And are you being appreciated? Is your skill set being appreciated? And believe me, folks, don't get me wrong. Rock and roll works for a lot of people. This is just me and Alan. This is just me and Alan that have gone corporate, things like that. I recommend that rock and roll people try to maintain a corporate appearance if possible, as much as possible. Avoid what they call the job killer. You know what I mean? The neck tattoos, the face tattoos, things
face
like that.
tattoos. Yeah,
tattoos
you're out.
Knuckle tattoos, hand tattoos
on your hands.
Things that you can't cover up with a long sleeve shirt or a sports coat, and hide from a corporate client from 8 to 5. Because as long as you can do that and maintain a good, happy attitude and be willing to help people and literally just love what you do with equipment, like. I try to explain to people all the time, and they think I'm blowing smoke up their ass, Alan. But you know as well as I do, I am a tech geek, man. As long as I got wires in my hand or knobs to turn or flashing lights in front of me, I'm happy as a lark.
Sounds like that toy you built, Dalbos.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's one of those like, yeah, I'm sorry. I get paid to play with people's expensive toys all day. How am I supposed to be miserable with that?
And sometimes the absolute state of the art.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to video with stuff like, here's a 100-foot 4K LED wall. Let's assemble it and look at some ultra 4K footage.
Wasn't that brilliant?
100-foot wide resolution,
Corporate audio, folks. We get to play with these toys.
Yeah,
I'm telling
you get to play with huge, crazy sound systems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And, it's interesting to me, number one, because I looked at Full Sail. I looked at a few of the options as far as tech schools and things like that go. I even went to the recording program at U of H for a little while, which was started from one of the guys from Sugar Hill, things like that. And it's one of those are great programs. They're good. Nothing
Oh yeah.
replaces experience in the field. Make sure that you go past your 30 hours of internship, folks. If you're not getting almost the equivalent number of hours a week in internship and hands-on experience that you're getting a book learning in this industry, you are cheating yourself for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What are some of the tips that you give up and coming audio engineers, Alan, be it rock and roll or corporate?
First off, chill out. Okay. As
Drop the
somebody
attitude, man.
spoke to me, oh my God, dude, you are there for the show. The show is not there for you.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm quoting Ryan Tremblay on that because, it was one of the Tremblay brothers.
Yeah.
One of the three. It could have been Randy. But no, you're there for the show. You are there to serve the show. And I don't care if that's rock and roll. They're not there to stroke your ego. Be as transparent as possible. Give them a good, clean mix that they would want to have again. You know, I understand that, especially if you're working with club equipment and stuff like that, a lot of times it's substandard. Okay, then do amazing things with what you have. Master it, learn the insides and out. And if it is a crappy piece of gear, learn why it's a crappy piece of gear. Don't just dismiss it. Be interested. You know, if you're not interested in this job, if you don't have a passion for music, if you don't have a passion for spoken word, if you don't have a passion for the arts, this is not the job for you. This is not a technical job. If you want a technical job, go be an IT guy. You know, go design video games. You know, there's a lot of art. There's as much art in this as exact science. And if you've been doing this for any period of time, you know what? There's plenty of exact science. You know, mixing consoles don't design themselves.
No.
But, you know, for a new engineer, listen to music.
Yeah.
Listen to as many different diverse types of music. Even if you hate it, listen to some of it, get to know it, get familiar with it. Listen to the sounds. Listen to lots of instruments. Listen to lots of different cultural music. That'll help you. Yeah. It'll help shape you as an engineer. Learn to play an instrument. At least one.
I can't explain that well enough, folks. Learning to play anything, it gives you a sense of timing. It gives you a sense of where things naturally belong. In addition to what Alan just said about listening specifically, I would say listen to as many different genres of mixed audio media as you can, from broadcast to podcast, from spoken word to speeches to audio dramas from the 1930s.
I was going to say, don't limit yourself to the modern stuff.
No, don't limit yourself to regular broadcast. Listen to AM broadcast, FM broadcast. Listen to how it's done from a
satellite radio if you have accurate.
It's really listening to it from a point of engineering. Like I belong to a lot of podcast groups, and of course, being the owner of the HC Universal Network, helping distribute and produce up to 9 podcasts right now, and spending years on broadcast, both in video and audio. It's one of those that, it's a different world. Like you were saying earlier, you've been doing some VO work and things like that. And I was like, good, keep doing it. Here's a way to get more clients. Here's a way to find more people and open yourself to that industry a little bit more now that you're into it. Because,
well, I find myself sometimes being closed-minded to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Much like the corporate audio realm. Now that you've stepped foot into that, hey, there's a dude sometimes that sits behind a microphone at a corporate show and gets paid to just go, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Mr. John.
Whatever your name.
He is the owner of this company. He's done this, and that. Let's hear it for him, folks. Like, that's his job. He is the VO. He is the voiceover, the VOG, the voice of God, as it's called in corporate AV. And there are people who get paid specifically to do that. What it takes is proper knowledge of vocal technique, stuff like that. And it's only through critical listening that you gain these skills. It's only through listening to things into minutia that you start to hear songs. Like, I remember the day it was like the clouds broke and the sun came out, as far as being an audio and recording engineer of even my own music at the time. The day that I critically listened to "Sympathy for the Devil" by the Rolling Stones. And
there usually is a day of reckoning.
Yeah, it was like, wow, I had a pair of really good headphones on and I was listening to it on vinyl, and I started listening to it and it was like, dude, there are like 10 different maraca lines going on in here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It was like, whoa.
I'm sure everybody was shaking something.
Yeah, it was like, wow. There was one pan to the far left, one pan to the far right, one in the back. It was like, dude, this is intense. And I started hearing every one of them at the time that they were being played in, and then kind of like in my mind's eye, like stepping back and hearing all of them at the same time, then moving back in. It was like, dude, just that sensory perception of that is so beautiful. And it was really a life-changing moment as far as being an engineer. It gave me a totally different concept as far as what to think, what to believe was possible within that medium. And like you said, even thinking that you couldn't do voiceover work, even thinking
I thought my voice sucked.
Yeah, I know. I was in a band with you and stuff like that, and you were like, "I'm horrible," and everyone was like, "You sing like a bird," and you're like, "Yeah, like a friggin' wounded bird with like
Buzzard.
half a foot, like no feet bouncing on the ground kind of bird." That's what kind of bird I sing like.
Angry Canadian goose.
And it really does take a realm of confidence. It really does take a firm understanding of what you're dealing with, and especially in the corporate realm, it takes a firm understanding of how to deal with people and deal with yourself dealing with people.
Mm-hmm. You've got to have a certain level of confidence, because if you're not confident in yourself when you walk into that room to, do something as simple as pin somebody with a mic.
They're scared as hell.
If you're not, absolutely, they're CEOs and things like that. But the thing is they need to have, your an aura around them, and you're usually the last person that contacts them before they go up on the stage. If you're the A2, or even if you're just a room tech, a floater. Yep. And they need to know that if something goes wrong, and be ready for it, because live sound is 90% damage control. They need to know if something goes wrong, you have their back, and you will do everything you can to make it right.
Well, and it was funny because I was just on a show, and I heard the owner of the company. We were all having drinks, things like that at crew dinner, and he was talking about how the guy that booked everybody was talking about rates, and how he's just a breakout lead. It's not like he's making the same amount as an A2. And the owner of the company was like, he doesn't really understand he doesn't deal with the pricing of things. He doesn't deal with booking the labor. He deals with like selling to the client and stuff. So that's not a concern for him, what an A2 is making, what a breakout lead is making. That's somebody else's job. He's just selling a concept, and this is what we're going to need to do, and this is who we're going to need. He doesn't know what their rate is. And he's like, he
doesn't make those decisions.
He was like, you do understand that the realm of knowledge and expertise for a breakout lead is far different and more intricate than what it is to be an A2, right?
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like, you understand.
Because you're not
He was
just
like,
talking about audio.
yeah, he's like, you understand that you got to understand that a breakout lead makes as much as our lead AV positions, like an A1, a V1. You know, they make that range because they have to have the knowledge of a video engineer. They have to have the knowledge of an audio engineer. They have to have the interpersonal skills to deal with clientele and the technical knowledge to be able to stomp out embers before they become fires in 5 rooms at a time. He's like,
and
so
they will. Yeah,
as opposed
half of
to
it's a setup.
as opposed to an A2 that's saying, okay, microphone check number 1, and you repeat that through microphone number 8, and then you put a microphone on somebody and let them go on stage, and then you retrieve it when they're done.
Right. But at the same time,
And
you're
of course you
babysitting
help
that
set up
system,
audio.
and anything can go wrong.
Oh, sure. It happens
all
the
the
time.
stuff that can go wrong in a rock and roll show can happen in a corporate show.
More so, except for it's not nearly as forgiving in a corporate environment. In rock and roll, there is a certain amount of slop. People, they may be upset, they may be gripey whenever a speaker goes out or something, but they go through it because the show must go on, and that's what you do. But I have seen executives stop a speech because something happens. I have seen people actively
It happened yesterday.
tens of thousands of dollars in return for their event because something technically went wrong. As opposed to rock and roll, where it's like, hey, man, it happens. Don't worry about it. Crowd was happy. Nobody noticed except the people on stage. It's all good. You know?
Yeah, no.
And it's a different.
That's not how it works.
It really is a different level of precision that has to be delivered on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's and that's just it. If you want to command that kind of rate, you better come on with the goodies.
That's it.
You better come on with the goodies. And you know what? Be willing to cross-train, especially if you want to keep working. Be willing. I mentioned it once. I'll say it again. I hate video, but
I know
I'm learning video.
Yeah.
I am learning it. You know why? Because I want that paycheck.
I told you to. I was like, I know you don't like it, but if you can learn these like 4 basic principles, like 4 resolution types, most video mixers, just like audio mixers, say input and output. Like I tell people starting off in the industry all the time, if you're not in lighting, don't be afraid. If you're not in video, don't be afraid. If you're not in audio, don't be afraid. It's all copper. It only pushes a signal. It's stupid. Just remember, if the connector doesn't fit, don't make it.
No. Absolutely not. Some people have not figured out that you cannot get that square peg in that round hole, no matter how much lube you use.
You're not going to make it fit. Don't try to make the 4-prong connection fit into the 3-prong connection. It's not going to happen. And when the cable says no, just stop. And you'll be okay.
You shouldn't have to force anything, honestly. That's another thing. When it comes to handling equipment, if you have to physically force it to do something, you're probably doing something wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
same thing
that's
with life
another
in general.
tip for a new engineer.
If you're having to force things in life in general, you might be doing something wrong. And
you remember Glenn Wheeler?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Back in my early days of really being serious about doing audio engineering for a living, I sat down with Glenn and I asked him some questions. One of the questions, I was trying to produce a mix for somebody. I believe it was a country music album I was working on. I'd done a live recording and I was really taking it into my first serious studio to mix it. And I said, I don't know how you get these sounds out of this equipment, Glenn. He said, well, do you feel like do the sounds come easy to you, or do you feel like you're having to force the equipment, to really spank it to get the kind of response out of it?
Yep.
Do you feel like you're beating it up too much? And I started thinking about it, and it completely changed the way. And it's amazing. Sometimes, as much as you want to learn, you're just not going to get a concept. But then all of a sudden, if you're meant to know it, one day it will just dawn on you.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. He was right. You know what? Glenn was 100% right. And once I stopped trying to force equipment to do things that it didn't want to do, I started getting better results.
Yeah.
Doing corporate audio, you're going to run into that a lot. Again, you're going to be expected to do a lot with a little bit of equipment.
That's it. And I tell people all the time, it's a joke that I have regularly, my life is one technical workaround. Consistently, I am making pieces of equipment do what they technically shouldn't do. I'm making cables connect in ways that they shouldn't connect, through adapters, anything to make the job happen. Even the tagline of this podcast, the only podcast on the internet where -10 is a number to be desired.
Yes, I always loved that.
It's one that anytime I have audio engineers on, whenever I announce it on air, they laugh. Because -10 is like consumer grade, folks. It's not professional sound. It's RCA connections. It's line input,
that
not
is
microphone input.
Yeah.
Not AES standard for broadcast. All kinds of stuff. But I myself, in my experience,
and unbalanced,
have had the case where sometimes in the studio, using that old school effect, using that old school DBX compressor, that was made for tape to tape recording and denoising with RCA inputs, comes out with a great friggin' result. Comes out with a totally unique sound. Some of these things you can only get in that realm. So what are you supposed to do? Not use them? Not use that trick in your hat?
Oh my God!
And I just
some of the best
myself
audio
as an engineer
has barrier strips.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it was a while before compressors actually had XLR, what some of the older guys call cannon plugs on them.
Yeah.
For a while there, they were just 1/4 inch, and it was unbalanced and then finally they came out with the balance, and that improved it. Of course, about the time they did that, well, along comes digital consoles, and now you're mixing in the box.
Yeah, exactly. And myself, and you've tried to do some mastering work for me. I've given you a couple tracks in the past, things like that. Myself as an engineer and as a recording artist, I still am analog entirely until the point that it hits the box. Really, the box for me is a stereo input, and I'm using my computer and my recording program like a big-ass analog 4-track. Nothing more. I'm commit to the mix. I don't use in the box, as it's called, or digital reverbs, delays, effects. Everything is affected before it hits the record interface. And that drives you crazy.
Not completely. To be honest with you, because I trust
creatively, it doesn't give you a lot of range as a mixing engineer, as a mastering engineer. You know what I mean?
Some of the best albums were actually recorded like that. As a matter of fact, John Simon, who recorded a lot of the band's early albums, he would commit the effect to the tape.
Yeah.
So what reverb was on there when the track was laid down. And I always thought that was an interesting technique. I've used it myself to great success, especially if I want something to have a band-esque sound to it.
Sure.
And there's been a lot of that. But at the same time, there is something to be said for, recording everything bone-ass dry and then soaking it down later.
Yeah, absolutely. You get a lot more play with it. You get a lot more time to tweak around with it without spending actual time in the studio with artists.
Right.
Most of the time, I am busy recording my own music. I got all the time in the world. I can find exactly what I want and leave it there. And that's exactly what they were doing with the band. They weren't necessarily. It was kind of like the Grateful Dead, where they were not necessarily limited to studio time. They were like, we will record it ourselves and we'll bring it to you. And
right, which is what the band did. They recorded the Brown album.
If it takes us 6, 7, 8 months to record it, that's what it takes, and we'll bring you our piece of art and you can distribute it. And then you can give us our chunk. But we aren't going to come into your studio and be limited by your time and your timetable and your budget to record this. Many great bands did that to great success. If I'm not mistaken, oh God, I'm trying to remember which band it was that like had a house that they recorded the whole thing in, where everybody was in a different room. And I want to say it was Bad Company.
The Doors did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they recorded L.A. Woman, they were all in, when actually it was an office, but let's see, the Brown album by the band, which had Up on Cripple Creek and some really great The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, stuff like that. That was recorded in Sammy Davis Jr.'s pool house. And they were renting the inside of the house. They all stayed in there, music from Big Pink. They recorded it in New York City, but they were all staying in the same house in Woodstock. That's where all that stuff got written.
Yeah. And it's just interesting.
The basement tapes were recorded there, too.
It's interesting to hear that kind of history and know that kind of history, because it really does give you a lot of great confidence in the fact that you can get good results from cheaper equipment. It just takes good engineering. It takes knowing what to do with it. That's what we have to do a lot of the time in the corporate environment. We are working within budget constraints, especially in breakout rooms and small rooms, things like that. Whereas what are you going to do? Refuse a show with 30 breakout rooms and not sell the show?
You might mention what exactly a breakout room is, because I'm sure some of the folk aren't familiar with corporate.
For those of you not familiar with the corporate AV environment of the corporate world, if you go to a large convention, if you go to a large meeting, let's say even a comic convention, folks, all right, there is what's called the GS, or General Session, which is where everybody gathers at one time to hear the message from a keynote speaker or a special guest, something like that. And then they're like, great, we've been here for an hour and a half. We just heard this guy speak. We just heard this promotion. Thank you very much to our sponsor. Until lunch, everybody, we're going to go to breakout rooms, which is basically small sessions where you go into a room of about 50 to 100 people and you learn about a select subject from a speaker. You take a lesson. You do an online class, something like that. Those are breakout sessions.
Or you get a hands-on demo.
Rooms. You get a hands-on demo, stuff like that. It's really much more the nitty-gritty of the corporate AV world, whereas the GS is the big whiz-bang pow of the AV world. That's where you've got the $100,000 video screen set up and everything else. The breakout room is where you have a $500 projector, a $2,000 screen, and a dude with a $200 microphone on him, and you've got to make it sound like a rock star. While he doesn't know how to operate his computer or plug it into a projector.
Oh yeah, you have to throw a little IT in there, because you've got to know how to operate PowerPoint and how to get things like slide advancers working.
Being a breakout operator is very much being a technical Swiss Army knife. You got to be able to do a little bit of everything.
Absolutely.
You got to
and
be
if you do one thing particularly
chef,
well,
cool. Dessert maker, all kinds of stuff, as
well
as the wait staff and greeter. Exactly. It's just like running a restaurant with one person.
Yeah.
Couldn't express.
Well, you also might mention the setup too.
Go ahead.
A lot. The easy job of any sound gig is obviously operating it. Well, corporate can be challenging. Again, because you're having to solve a number of problems, and sometimes, you're being drawn on multiple, and everybody is going to say, oh, well, my room's more important, whatever, no, if they're the client, whoever they are, they're just as important. It doesn't matter if on their off days they're a janitor or a CEO. If they're there and they're your presenter, they're the client. You do whatever you can for them. If you need backup, call for backup. There's usually plenty of people on a show.
Yep.
As far as you have to do IT as well. You have to know, first off, you have to know how to get the signal out of the computer, even to be distributed to the projector wherever it's going. Sometimes you actually have relay systems from one room to another for overflow. And that is dependent on a network switch and things like that. It goes back to a central location and it's redistributed. We've actually gotten some pretty high tech now, and as an audio engineer, this is stuff I didn't even know existed because I was such close-minded.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've seen the error of my ways.
Well, you've got to be open-minded to it. You've got to be open-minded to a different learning experience, a different way of viewing the world, a different way of even viewing your career. Like I was telling you earlier today, why would you not put yourself up for editing podcast episodes? As much as you're doing voiceover, things like that, podcast episodes, as far as editing, are super easy. You may not make a whole lot, but you can make about $15-$20 an episode, something like that, and it'll take you about an hour.
Sure,
to
but
work.
how long was an episode take? Exactly. $20 an hour is not bad.
Like no, not when you're talking about you work for 3-4 podcasts and you're making an extra $100 a week in your spare time at night or in the morning.
Absolutely.
Super easy.
Also, one thing about corporate, depending on what part of the country you're in, or, if you're in Canada or whatever your locale is, generally it's seasonal. And the way it operates is, when the hotel rates go up, so like summer break, the holidays, things like that, people don't want to put on corporate events because they're buying hotel rooms, they're paying for the ballrooms, the rates go up, which means you're going to be sitting on your butt for a while.
Not just that, but it's also the fact of the corporate AV schedule follows very much the school schedule, because whenever kids are off from vacation, executives don't want to be at a week-long meeting in D.C. Their kid's on vacation for 2 months. I want to spend some time with my kid at night, man. So same thing at Christmas. So you're looking at some lulls. So don't give up on the rock and roll. I'm not saying give up on it. Absolutely go out and run sound a few nights a week, whatever, record bands.
Keep your fingers. Yeah, anything you can do to keep the income coming, do it, because corporate AV, especially if you get up, into the op level and things like that, the money is really great, but it's not there all the time.
The way I try to explain it to people is there's a lot of different flavor pies out there, folks, and with 10 fingers, you can taste a lot of them.
Yes, you can. I mean, but like me, I'm not opposed to mixing bands. If a band calls me to go mix them, absolutely, I got their back. I also work with a company that does, translation. To be honest with you, I'm in a corporate environment, and translation tech is about as easy as it gets.
Yeah.
There's really not that much to it. Yeah. It's the easiest sound job you'll ever do for probably the best money as far as work versus how well you're compensated. Honestly, it's not always about the money.
No.
It's about consistency.
It's about consistency. It's about I would much rather have somebody hire me out for 10 days a month at $300 a day for even 15-hour days. I don't care.
Right. I mean, most of it's overtime over 40.
Then to have somebody call me up for 5 or 10 days a month at like $40 an hour. I'd much rather have the consistency and regularity of gigs for a little bit less than to have a little bit more money and have it spotty. and not
that's the
have
other
regular
thing
work.
I had to learn. Don't be a prima donna.
No,
if you want to make it, especially in the corporate world, there's people, they think they're AV gods. Okay. And I mean, especially if you're on any of the groups and stuff like that, you'll identify them pretty quick. I'm not a god. I'm just a guy.
No.
All right. I just happen to be a guy who knows how to run sound. That's cool.
However,
and I don't
if somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes. If Ghostbusters taught us anything,
I do.
If Ghostbusters taught us anything, if somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
I don't know.
But I know what you're saying.
I
know what you're saying. That's it. I know what you're saying. It's the fact of we all have lessons to learn. Even myself, 20 years in the industry, audio and video. I started with lighting and set design and set construction in high school in theater. And I've done a little bit of everything in my time. But if I myself am not actively learning something every day on the job, I feel as though I wasted 8 to 10 hours. If I didn't learn a better way to communicate with a client, a more efficient way to get my job done, a more efficient way to set up my station, something.
A clean over-under.
Yeah.
If you're going to do this at all, I mean, I don't care what kind of audio you're doing.
Commit.
Learn how to over-under a cable.
Well, and
learn how to do it right.
It's the fact of commit. Whatever you're doing in life, just commit. Do it right. Do it to the very best of your ability, forever and always.
If you don't totally want to be there, you shouldn't be there at all.
Yes, exactly.
If you're not in the place you don't want, if people can tell, the client can tell. If you don't want to be there, they're going to know.
That vibration happens. And just like at a rock and roll concert, folks, those of you that are audio engineers out there listening, you know what that synergy is. You know what that energy is, where you're sitting behind the console and you can feel it resonate like a wave from the stage across the crowd back to you and then back to the stage. That's synergy and that's energy and that's unmistakable. And just like that exists in a rock and roll environment, that exists in a corporate environment. When you're putting out negativity of, good God, I just have to be here. I hate being here. That is felt. Totally and absolutely.
And it all spreads to the other crew members too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a cold in a daycare center, and it spreads quick.
Well, and it's how our brains are wired. We are negative feedback machines, if you think about it. In all nature versus nurture, animal versus man, everything else that we have in our body, it's the fact of instinct. And the first thing that our brain learns, even as a baby, even as primordial Neanderthal man, is that danger is more important than safety. Danger teaches you how to be safe. It's a negative feedback machine. Fire is hot.
Right.
So you learn real fast not to touch it.
Right.
The negative thing gives you positive reinforcement. And unfortunately our brains are wired that way. And we thrive off of negativity. We want negativity. It's crazy. It's a weird thing. And it really is a personal battle to kind of get rid of that and be like I said a while ago, people think I blow smoke up their ass most of the time because I truly love what I do on every single day basis, because I get paid to play with people's expensive toys. I get paid to put pretty pictures up on screen. That's it. And when you have that mentality, man, it's simplistic. It's childlike. How can you not like or want that?
That's true. But I mean, okay, there are negative sides, especially, recently, there are downsides to doing corporate AV. Yes, you are going to get bored at a 6-day conference. You will. You'll get tired of swapping batteries. You'll get tired of.
You're going to get tired in the rock and roll world too. You know what? You may have
True.
a hip hop act open up for your hard rock act, and you don't like hip hop, but you got to mic them. You got to play the backing track. That's how it works. Um, you know, there's things that we
And
don't
if you're
like
any
every single
engineer,
day.
yeah,
You're going to do
if
it.
you're any kind of engineer, you're going to do your damnedest to make them sound good, even if you don't like the music.
That's it. Because just like in corporate, you're only as good as your last gig.
Yes.
You know, and that's what it really boils down to, is the fact of you have to learn to understand to sacrifice just an inkling of your ego and knock yourself down a couple rungs so that you
I
can be a
witnessed it
better
yesterday.
engineer.
No, and to be honest with you, especially if you're doing corporate, you've seen it a million times.
Oh yeah.
You know, on the management end, but you've also been the crew lead who actually had to go and pull somebody off the shows.
I've
like
been
that.
the
It's
crew
not
lead.
nice.
It's like, it sounds to me like you needed to leave about 2 or 3 hours ago if you were that upset.
Yeah, and I've actually, to be honest with you, I've been the person pulled off the show one time because I came off a little bit snotty to a client, and you know what? That's their right. They need to know that they need to know that you have their back. And to be honest with you, at that point, I had enough of the show, and them asking me to leave probably was the safest thing for all parties.
Like you said earlier, like we were saying about rock and roll, as opposed to rock and roll, where it's like, this is my stage and you're a guest in my venue as an engineer. That is their event in the corporate world, and they paid tens of thousands of dollars to put it on, and you are privileged enough to come work their event.
Absolutely. But if you don't, you know, you've got to keep up a good face. You know, first off, don't let a little thing turn into a big thing.
No.
You know, do the best you can to help the client. If you cannot help them, don't be afraid to admit it and call for backup. It's really okay. That's why they give you those radios.
Yeah.
You know, if you get in over your head, there are people who will have your back.
That's right. Be willing to lean on your team. Be willing to be part of the team. Be willing to use your team to get the job done for the client.
Learn some Zen.
Absolutely.
You know, you're going to have to learn some Zen because this stuff will get under your skin. It's not just the boredom. Sometimes you've got, again, 4 or 5 failures at once in 4 or 5 different rooms. You know, you have different client demands. You've got to be flexible. Okay? Don't expect them to be flexible. The person who's going to have to bend is going to be you. So lose your attitude. Check that shit at the door.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't have said any of this better. I'm so glad that you joined me today to talk about this. I'm glad that we got to hook up. It's been a minute or two since we chatted. Old friend, we got to hook up not too long ago at a corporate event. I was working in Boston. We got to spend the afternoon together, and it was great. I look forward to it again next time I'm up there. Next time you're in the Austin area, make sure to look me up.
But of course.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing your realm of knowledge, Alan, your realm of experience, your realm of change from one medium of industry to the other. You know, it's invaluable information for people to listen to open their horizons, to open their eyes to new opportunities, to think of new and interesting ways to ply your trade on the daily. That's what this show is about. So thank you so much.
Amen and amen. Thank you.
And
thanks for having me.
While you're online, folks, listening to this episode, make sure to visit the HC Universal Network. HC Universal Network is, of course, our parent network. You can go there to check out things like Dudes and Beer, Yes But Why podcast, all about improv and comedy, Scary Dad podcast, all about horror, scary, and Halloween and comic book stuff. We got Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, which is a therapy show. We've got a new show coming up called Gray Matters, which is about the extremes in life, both left and right, and why we can't seem to find a middle ground. We have all kinds of shows there. Go check it out. Download the free, absolutely free HC Universal app, now available on Android in the Google Play market. You can catch all the episodes there. It will soon be available in the iTunes market. Once again, Alan, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, everybody, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your hearing, take care of your vision, and until next time, keep reaching for 11. We will talk to you soon. Take care.
This is Talking Sound.